Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about education funding, or funding in particular for schools, and probably more focusing on high schools, I guess, but schools generally. Now, across the Western world, there are different models for school funding. Some are funded by state, some by sort of local town district, others federally, and so on. So there's some differences in these funding models, but the propaganda around equal outcomes tends to be very consistent all across the Western world. So now the issues of school choice is one that seems to bring out the ideological fanatics pretty quickly, and the teachers' unions are, if anything, ideologically fanatic. but I was looking at one online where the black female activist was saying that school choice of any sort should not be allowed unless all schools receive an exactly equal amount of funding, per student. Also, compensatory funding for schools that have, say, students with learning difficulties, they should get extra, and so on and so forth. So now, quite a lot of her, and others like her, by the way, she's not alone. The diatribes and the claims and the accusations, the allegations, they're mostly untrue. Or minimally true, minimally accurate. But in say parts of the US, some states, if you live in a poor area where the incomes are low and there's a lot of unemployment, that sort of thing, then the local council, the local city isn't collecting a whole lot of money in rates and payments and fees and so on. So they have less money to allocate to the schools. And in these poor areas, there tends to be mostly black people on lower incomes or unemployed. A lot of drug issues, crime issues, those sorts of things. A very low proportion of kids at school have a mother and father at home, and many kids are living in quite large families, say five brothers and sisters, 6 brothers and sisters, where each one of their siblings has been a result of a different liaison that their mother has had. So this is hardly an environment for social stability and cohesion. Nonetheless, trying to get kids to attend school and then to do any good, apply themselves to their lessons and their studies is not so easy. And there's less money to go around. Now, the concern that this particular educator expressed was, let's suppose there are a few bright kids in that school. Then if the parents of the bright kids, or the parent, as the case may be, had an option, they would want to move that bright black kid into a better neighborhood school, a school that, say, was predominantly white. And that would then deprive that school of a bright kid who would be a good role model for other black kids. So, well, gee, I want to pass the exams like this kid does. How does he pass exams? Well, he hits the books and he, studies hard and so on. So they think, well, they'd lose a role model if that were to happen. Also, they believe that just because that's a poor area doesn't mean it should have less resources for education. So they should get the same amount of money as the wealthy area. But this paradigm can apply even where the school funding is exactly equal per student, because it plays out in other ways. Firstly, in a high crime area where there's a lot of crime at school, and teachers have got a high likelihood of getting beaten up by the students and this sort of thing, or assaulted by the students, that the teachers would say, well, gee, I don't want to teach in an area like that. I want to teach an area where the kids are well behaved, where they respect their teachers, and where there's a very low percentage of single mothers, that sort of stuff. I want to live in an area, or teach rather, in an area that's got low crime. So the teachers who want to teach in nice areas, low crime areas, the list is long. So the teachers with the most experience and the better qualifications these sorts of things, they will tend to go to those schools or go into private schools in the better areas, and so they naturally attract a better quality of teacher. Generally, I mean, it's not a perfect 100%, but generally they'll attract a better quality of teacher. So the quality of education is higher. Similarly, the teachers have if there's parents that are wealthier, then that will reflect in various ways, such as the kids come to school better prepared, they've got more educational materials at home, they're encouraged by their parents to finish their homework and their school assignments. All these sorts of things contribute to a better school atmosphere and environment. There are less things being stolen and damaged. One of the things that intrigued me for the brief time I was at a how can I say this delicately, a multicultural school, was how determined the students were to destroy school property. I couldn't understand that, because that's going to make it harder for everybody. So why would you do that? They perceived they were fighting back against the man, and so it was, they were being edgy and daring and stunning and brave by destroying school property. I remember at this quite upmarket upper middle class school I was at, high school, and a kid came from a high crime area school. He was a white kid, but his mother, who was quite good looking, had ended up shacking up with some guy who had money, and she'd been a single mother before that in a poor area. So they moved to this wealthy area, and so this kid came, but he still had the habits and behaviours and attitudes of when he was at the school in the high crime area. So his gig was, he'd come to school with various sort of tools like screwdrivers and all sorts of things, where he would unscrew the tops of desks and unscrew and try and put glue into locks, so the locks wouldn't operate and the desks would fall apart or the chairs would fall apart and these sorts of things. And I saw, I was in class, had a class one day, and it was a detention class actually. He got it for doing something, but I got it for not having my school badge in the right position. And so, and I was looking at him, how I was amazed. He was unscrewing, like taking the screws out of the desk, and he had a bit of tools for it. Screws were in pretty tight, and they had like a lock nut sort of thing on it. So he had the full thing, like the extender bar and the right angle screwdriver, the whole thing. I was looking at. So he'd come well equipped. I mean, this wasn't like a rando thing. I was what are you doing? Oh, I'll just fuck them up. This will fuck them up. I'll just destroy this desk. And somehow he perceived it was some act of rebellion. I said, but why? Some other kid's going to want to use that desk. It doesn't matter. This will fuck him up. This will show him. So he had this strange attitude. So these sort of kids, the destructive kids, you don't really find them in the good schools. And so this idea of having, school equipment that doesn't work, or it's damaged, or it's whatever, you don't have those sort of problems, or certainly to a much lesser extent. Now, other factors, in the school library in the wealthy area was very well stocked. It was almost better than the local council-run library, because parents would, the parents were concerned about the education. So if little Billy Bob went home and said, Dad, I couldn't find any books about such and such a so-and-so, the dad would go out and would buy the books and donate them to the school. So things like that happened. So the school was very well stocked with some excellent texts and these sort of things. So even if the school, as in from the government, the school funding is the same, the difference in the environment, the quality of the equipment, and so on. Now, in schools where things is getting damaged all the time, the school's reluctant to spend money on anything, sophisticated machinery, computers, which was in the early days really of personal computers back then. Is reluctant to spend money because kids will vandalize it or steal it or destroy it somehow. Whereas in the well-behaved schools, you don't get that. You can buy those sort of things in, and they won't get damaged. They're there for everyone's use, and it's perceived as a benefit for all students. So there's a lot of differences in, even when the funding is the same, there's a lot of differences in the additional funding that may come from parents and the selection of things that the school's prepared to spend money on the basis that it won't get vandalized or damaged. So it's a much bigger issue than a poor area, not a poor area. But the idea that some of these activists were putting forward is, well, we want bright kids to be in a dumb kids class, dumbass kids class, because the teacher then will have to slow everything down to suit the dumb kids. So the teacher's going to be saying, and that will mean that the bright kids don't get as a good education. And this is good because it then narrows the gap between the bright kids and the dumb kids. So it brings us closer to equal outcomes by dumbing down the bright kids. I mean, wow, I mean, social justice. And so this was an interesting thing that they were pushing around as being. So the education of kids isn't the issue. It's creating equal outcomes is the issue. And the dumbest, black kid or brown kid is the standard, and all white kids have to be reduced to that standard. And that will be an act of great social justice and education equality. It's insane, I know, but this is what's doing the rounds. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.